Welcome to Great Taste. I'm your host, Steve Boss. 60 minutes upcoming of deliciousness. And our first guest on this week's show is Jeremy Salomon. He is he's the owner of Augie's Counter and the chef at Augie's Counter in Brooklyn, New York, but he's a second generation Hungarian-American. And his new book is called Second Generation. And it's a book that has many different types of recipes in it. I mean, for one, very unfamiliar with Hungarian food, and it's an amazingly enticing book. There's recipes like semolina dumplings, chilled sorrel soup, turnip schnitzel, syrupy walnuts, so many things that I have, were completely outside of my realm of experience and understanding. And yet the book itself just really sucks you in because the flavor palette that it paints is absolutely enticing. So, Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Wow, you sold me on my own book.
I know where you can buy a copy, but not yet. It's
Yeah.
not out
I
yet.
think
It,
I've only been given one copy so far, so that's the one I'm holding on to. But yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm lucky enough to have one also. So,
That's
so that's great. Yeah, I really am very interested in talking with you because in the book, you write in the acknowledgments, this book is a home, a place where you want to nestle up in its corners and live in it for a while. Building that home took a village, though, a village that has filled these pages with an abundance of love and care. And that was very moving to read. And I would really appreciate if you would just say a few words about this village that it took to build this book.
yeah. Gosh, I didn't think anybody read the acknowledgments. So, thank you for acknowledging the acknowledgments. Yeah, it I'm with any big projects like this, with building a restaurant, even definitely with building a restaurant, it takes a village, and there are so many people that contributed in many different ways to birthing it into existence. And it's always been a dream of mine to write a cookbook. It's been a dream of mine to open up a restaurant, and I would not have done that by myself. So just being able to rely on those people and have them a part of the journey was very special. And I wanted to make sure that was acknowledged.
So we'll probably talk about a few of those people in our discussion. You write at the beginning of the book that your childhood was a tale of two grandmas.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for you to just give us any insights, tell us any stories that you like about those two grandmothers and their influence on you, because I'll just say I can relate to that because my maternal grandmother was a huge influence on me
Right.
in terms of my love for food.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to live smack dead in the middle between my two, like geographically between my two grandmothers, and they really played a pivotal role in my upbringing, both in cooking and in life. And I was fortunate to be able to visit them all the time. They came over, we had big dinners. And it was easy. It wasn't like we had to travel 3 hours or to another state. And I I was telling somebody recently, I can't tell my story without telling theirs, and I'm proud of that. And my mother as well. It's really a story of three women that influenced how I live my life, how I see it, and how I cook. I think maybe most importantly. So, but my grandmothers were always there. I saw them multiple times a week and was lucky enough to be fed by them. And so this book, I think, encapsulates all of that.
So one of your grandmothers, the restaurant is named after her, Augie,
Mhm.
and she was from Hungary. and she had a particular term that she used for you that I'll let you pronounce, so I'm not going to.
Yeah. Csillag, which means star in Hungarian. She would always, you knew Grandma Aggie was in the house where she said, where's my Adish Csillag? Where's my little star? And there was just, yeah, a lot of comfort that surrounded that phrase. And, of course, made me feel special. For the longest time, I had no clue what Csillag meant. I knew my grandmother was Hungarian. I knew these words were being flung about the room, especially when like my father and my uncle would get mad, like you'd hear these curse words, but I didn't know what Csillag was until I was like in my teens, and I was like, oh, all right, yeah, that's why she called me that. But yeah, that was my nickname for her.
Now, the interesting thing that I thought, the thing that was really fascinating to me was that as you got older, she wanted to, even though she cooked for you and you remember, and there's so many dishes that were influenced by her, but she wanted to actually shoo you out of the kitchen
Yeah.
because it wasn't a place that she associated with men, if I understood what you wrote.
Yeah, she came around, but in the beginning, I think she was just very confused by my interest in the kitchen. And I also think that she thought it was a very I think outside the actual like home kitchen, I think she thought it was like a very not so lucrative job, which can be true. And I think she wanted maybe something, like any Jewish grandmother, maybe she wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer. And yeah, she just didn't have a lot of interest in teaching me. And eventually she came around to it.
Then your other grandmother, completely different cultural influence because she was from the Sephardic heritage, or more, we'll call it, North African, or that type of heritage. And she had her own term of endearment for you, which I can pronounce because it's in English,
Yeah.
to the moon, right?
Yes. Yeah, to the moon. She would anytime I would leave her house, or she would sign a letter to me, it was always to the moon. And which, I love you to the moon and back. So that was just the abbreviated way of saying that.
But she included you and encouraged you in the kitchen. So very different type of
Yeah. Yeah, my mom is a great cook, but she cooked she's willing to admit that she cooked out of necessity and to provide for the family, but anytime that she did, she made sure it was delicious. And but her mother, Nana Arlene, was, I mean, like her home was the epicenter of everything that was food. She had hundreds of cookbooks that lined the wall, and she was really big into Martha Stewart and Ina Garten. And she's, setting the table was a big to do, and just, trussing chickens and making steaks and vinaigrettes and chocolate cakes. And it was a very, I think for any like little chef, it was a thing to watch her make all of that.
And is that her in some of the photos that are in the book?
Yeah, I think she's the very first photo after the introduction is Grandma Aggie, and then on the next page is an older photo of Nana Arlene, but she does appear at a table setting later in the book, which was I was thrilled to have her there.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful photo, which all the photos in the book are really, really wonderful. Uh, Another person that you mentioned, I think at least twice in the book, is George Lang, an author and restaurateur. He was the author of The Cuisine of Hungary, and that seems to have had a major influence on you also.
Yeah, George Lang was really the first voice that I had discovered that was preaching Hungarian cuisine in a way I'd never seen it talked about before, written about. And so he was this Hungarian restaurateur, really prominent in New York in the 70s, 80s. And he had a very famous restaurant called Cafe des Artistes, which all the celebrities went to, and was just kind of grand and had these big murals and big flower arrangements and sausage trees. Like he would have these like metal trees that like had sausage on them, like or salami rather. So he was really quirky and eccentric and out there, and that meshed with the Hungarian heritage aspect of it was really eye-opening to me. And he had written a book called The Cuisine of Hungary, which I had found a copy of, and it has this very large history, like specifically the history of the food of Hungary, which is so niche. And I remember reading it and just being like, well, Grandma Aggie really failed to mention all of that. So he's played a very big part in all of this.
So was that, what were the major influences then that led you to this, your own self-exploration of Hungarian cuisine, and how did that happen?
Yeah, I was at the time that I found George Lang's book, I was and I was encouraged by other chefs that I had been working for and peers to kind of start exploring what kind of food I was interested in, because if I was ever gonna have a restaurant of my own one day, or a name for myself, it was important to kind of do some self-discovery and see what I feel out what I had enjoyed cooking. So I started with my roots, and I had interest in Hungary in learning more about Hungarian food, but from what I knew, I didn't quite know what would come of it, considering that Hungarian food can be very heavy and very, full of sauces and meats. So I think the idea of meshing that with like a market driven New York young chef energy was really how the inspiration came together.
And then did you go to, I mean, I know you've been to Hungary, but how did that, what did you do? How many, did you go often? How did you explore that on a very local type scale?
Yeah, so I had gone to Hungary a few times when I was younger, and after I had discovered the George Lang's book and really started pursuing that as a real avenue, I left New York and pretty much moved to Hungary for a couple of months and stayed with my cousins. I have like an older set of cousins and a younger set of cousins, so I split my time between the two of them. So I got to explore the outer regions of Hungary, the city center and Budapest. I would take day trips to Austria, which I know sounds very luxurious, but required very long car rides. And even like touched a little bit of like northern Italy. So there was, yeah, and I would fly to I flew to Paris and stayed on a friend's couch for a couple of weeks. So yeah, I did the young chef thing and got bit by the travel bug.
And when you were doing this, I'm curious as to, did you feel like from the very beginning that you were like, yeah, this is it. I'm in the groove. I'm in the right place. This is what I want to bring out. This is who I am.
Yeah, I think it was mix. I think it was like a mixed feeling because I wasn't sure how to evolve this cuisine. And I think Hungary itself was at least like, I don't know, more than a decade ago. I think like they were trying to figure it out too. Um, a lot of things in Europe, maybe it's like especially Hungary, they're just a little bit behind us. So, when burgers were like a really big thing here and pop-up trucks, like they were just right behind us and then they caught up to that and now if that makes sense. So I think when I was there, I was trying to figure out like, well, how do I evolve this in a way that is my own? And how do I make that distinct? So that was part of the that was part of the struggle.
And I think to me, it seems like it took a lot of inner courage to, I mean, if you were going to open an Italian restaurant, if you were going to open a another sub shop or another pizza joint or whatever, you could say, well, that takes a lot of courage because there's already so many of them. But hey, everybody eats that stuff, so great.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
but you're like jumping essentially off some type of precipice because you've got stuff that dill is really big and caraway is really big,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, are people going to buy this?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking anyway.
No, I was terrified. I was completely terrified of the reception and if people would get it, and or would it just be something that like it was a phase and I got that out of my system. Um, but I'm but I think what I'm most proud of here at Augie's is that at Augie's Counters that we I've taken Hungarian cuisine and these things like pagacha and palacinta and words that people probably a lot of people didn't even know before, at least in this area, this community, the New York City area. And now people come in and they're like, "Oh, I'll have one pagacha. I'll order a palacinta. Give me the chilled borscht." And it's now incorporated into their vocabulary, and it's something that they know. So, as a chef and as a business owner, and you know, it's I'm successful in that way. I've achieved what I set out to do. And that's just, even if it's in the smallest way, I contributed in kind of broadening someone's culinary horizon.
And that's the way I feel, reading the book, because as I said at the outset, the flavor combinations that you not just evoke, but are in black and white in the book, were things that many times are just outside of my realm of experience. I mean, I know borscht, I know how to make borscht. I make borscht, but I make a very specific, very simple Russian style borscht. And here we are, where you are making this incredibly fascinating borscht that I guess I would just get to right now, because you have some type of love for beets that I know you're going to tell us about, because you're right. I have a very deep, intimate relationship with beets, including a beet tattoo on my arm.
Yeah.
And there are beets, there are pickled beets, there are chilled buttermilk borscht with beets, there's heartbroken beets. There's a lot of beets in this. I
Yeah.
love beets, but I mean, it's
Yeah. No, beets are part of the we call we call it like the holy trinity here at Augie's. It's dill, caraway, and beet is kind of at the epicenter of everything. And yeah, I it's funny because I hated beets when I was a child. Like that was not something that like I didn't actively hate it, but it was just something I maybe, didn't really think of eating. And when I got older, I realized when I started getting into my teens, and started really exploring food and my heritage, beets kept popping up in a lot of recipes. Because for Eastern Europeans and Jews, beets are an essential ingredient. So I wanted to find ways to again like evolve it and make it in ways that I would love to eat it. So I have like the heartbroken beets in the book, which they're just pretty much soaked in a chamomile honey vinegar, that's made with white balsamic. So it's really kind of floral and sweet. And then it's paired with a delicious like fudgy blue cheese. And I don't know, for me, I could eat like mounds of that. So yeah, I think exploring beets in different ways has always been a passion project.
with the tattoo.
Yeah, and then the tattoo. So I have it's a beet, but it's an anatomical heart that has beet greens coming out of it, kind of signifying a heartbeat. So that's forever on my skin.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Now, you say that the most famous dish at the restaurant is deviled eggs, which you would never have expected something like that. So if that's true, but what caught my attention was the recipe that followed that, which was the chicken liver mousse. with cherry caramel.
Yeah.
And that's what I was referring to, these flavor combinations and textural combinations are, and it's in one sense to me, they're mind blowing. And I'm just like, I said to my wife, I said, I got to go there and eat, because I think that's I mean, I guess there are two objectives really for a cookbook. One is to get people to, after they buy it, of course, one is to get people to actually cook from it. And the other thing, which I think precedes that, is to create a sense of wonder in them that they need to do it. And I have to tell you, I think you've done that with this book.
Oh, thank you.
It's,
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Was and I think Augie's counter gave me that confidence to do that, because as I said, I wasn't sure what the reception would be to these things kind of presented in new ways with different flavor profiles. And uh having had the restaurant, it really, and being confident of the reception, I think was really helped fuel the book. uh Deviled eggs at the time were the most popular dish when we wrote that. That has completely flipped, and the tuna melt is something that, which is like not Hungarian and maybe not so Jewish, but it's definitely not kosher. Became something that we are so wildly known for. But what I love is that everyone, even all of our regulars, I kind of describe it like Disney characters or Pokemon. Like everyone kind of has their like favorite character, and like it's the deviled eggs, the chilled borscht, the tuna melt, the cheesecake, the caraway Caesar, which is in the book as well. So I think everybody kind of had each one of these items has their own kind of like cult following, which is really cool.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I know that when we're talking about the sandwiches, the recipe for the caraway Pullman, uh, you accompany it with this bit of insight. My ultimate version of a turkey club is in honor of my dad, who has always said, you can tell how good a diner is by their turkey dish. And I love that because, do you know Richard Gutman at all?
The
He,
name's not familiar to me.
he's kind of like the diner expert. He's written a number of books about diners.
Okay.
He cultivated a museum exhibit about diners,
Oh,
and that's like his go-to. When he goes to a diner, he's going to get a turkey club because he
wow.
wants to
Okay.
see whether or not they really know what they're doing.
I'll have to ask my father if that's where that came from. But I mean, as far as I can remember, he's always said that to me anytime. And we've been to a lot of diners. So especially I grew up in Florida, which is kind of riddled with them. So that was always his go-to if it was a first time at a diner. So yeah, I attribute that to him.
I love that. So, what is the fascinating? So, we've got beets, but there's also another fascination with pickles because it seemed like it was a childhood obsession and it's ongoing, right?
Yeah, when I was little, would eat I would actually drink the pickle brine, and I would go through jars of pickle, and I didn't really know, like it never occurred to me that that was a little weird. It was just, oh, I really like this thing, and it's super acidic and briny and kind of sweet, and it could be sour, and I would just eat jars of it. So that's kind of carried me through into my adult life. And I uh we make how many different types? I mean, I think we make like 6 different kinds of pickles here at the restaurant. So, and they're always rotating with the season. So that's a staple for sure.
And one of the pickles you make is a cauliflower pickle, which I thought that was interesting. But more than that, related to cauliflower was a dish that I think I'm trying to remember what you say that I'm trying to find it right here in my notes that your grandmother, oh, her grandmother Augie's idea of a vegetable side was cauliflower mush. And that when you
Yep.
were growing up, you had no idea what cauliflower really tasted like because the cauliflower mush, you want to
It's
describe it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like whipped potato with a bunch of butter and cream in it, and then but made with cauliflower, and then she would pack it with like these breadcrumbs. So it was just, you never really tasted the cauliflower. It was just this like wonderful fat loaded dish. And I still think about it. So there's this recipe in the book for cauliflower mush, at least my take on it. So I'm hoping people will make that and serve it as a side or have it as a main. I don't know. Spooned pureed cauliflower is delicious. So
There are a number of recipes that I would love to just, focus on for just a few minutes because they seem to fit into the heritage. Uh,
yeah.
you're, evolving that heritage. For example, there's an iconic Hungarian biscuit recipe, but it's dill and cheddar. I mean, it just sounded magnificent.
Yeah, sorry, do you want me to I can get that background noise if you can hear it. Like, you're good. Okay. Sorry, can you repeat the question? I
Sure. There are a number of recipes in the book that we'll say are taken from the tradition, but you're riffing on, as you mentioned, and one of those is an iconic Hungarian biscuit, and it was just the I understand that what you're saying is that a lot of biscuits in Hungary can be savory. They could also be sweet, and
Mhm.
but this one that stood out, it was the dill and cheddar biscuit. That just sounds incredible, and has a lot of different uses actually.
Yeah, so the pagacha was so in Hungary, pagacha, it's a biscuit, and they're usually very tiny. They're like can I say that it looks like they're tall, they're small, and they usually have like these hatch marks on top of it. They're stuffed with cheese, sometimes like crispy pork rinds, and they're usually served with like a butter at the table. It's kind of like in a bread basket. But I wanted to make larger versions of them and serve them as like a bodega egg and cheese sandwich. So our opening pastry chef, Renee Hudson, she's incredibly talented and took kind of these recipes that I had and like, evolved it and made it into this much more American, larger sized biscuit, but still keeping the inspiration intact. Um,
Another, oh, go ahead.
oh no, that was it.
Another iconic recipe would be chicken paprikash, but you follow that recipe with what you call unfaithful roast chicken.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things in the world is a roast chicken, actually to the point where it's a little comical. And I can eat roast. I would eat that as my last meal. So I wanted to find a way again to evolve the recipe in a way that I could also enjoy it. I love chicken paprikash as is. I mean, it's braised chicken uh at the end of the day that you can serve with dumplings, and it's so comforting and nostalgic, but I think the roast chicken kind of elevates it a little bit and takes it in a different direction and a younger direction that um, is fun and approachable.
And how about the real origin of goulash? Because if people think about Hungary, I think generally it's like, oh, Hungarian goulash. I don't think any of us even know what it is, or most of us don't. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So goulash, well, here in America, goulash can be a lot of different, can be like a lot of different things, but mainly it's made with like chuck beef and tomatoes and onions and pepper. It's a braised meat dish. And it's sometimes served with egg noodles. That's like the very American version of it. In Hungary, it's it's still a braised meat dish. It can be made with a variety of different meats. Sometimes pork, sometimes like pork butt, pork shoulder. Could also be made with some like ox even. But it's got like carrots in it and onions and some tomato paste. Um, and it's just a beautiful, it can be kind of like whatever you want it to. Like what I discovered is that goulash or even paprikash can just be kind of the shell or the vehicle for like if as long as you have your foundation, you can kind of like move it in any direction. I have a recipe for shrimp paprikash, which is kind of weird and unheard of, but again, it was taking that shell or vehicle and expanding on it.
Now, one of the other ingredients that pops up that people associate with Hungary, of course, is paprika. And my question to you is, could you explain, because there are different types of paprika, and if is there a favorite supplier for these that you
Yeah.
could share with us?
So the only place to get real paprika is in Hungary. And you'll just have to smuggle it back into the country, which I've done. And it's really difficult to find quality paprika here in the States. It's just, usually you'll get like the red bag, like drawstring bag. They're like made for tourists. You can probably find them in like, a grocery store or online, but real paprika has such a depth of flavor to it. I don't think people really know that or aware of it. It's not just something that you dust on top of your mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving or on top of your deviled eggs. It really does add this sort of very unique flavor to it that's subtle in ways, but also once you get to know it is very distinct. So, but Burlap and Barrel is an incredible spice company, and I do reference them in the book. We use their sweet paprika, which is labeled noble paprika, and then we have their hot paprika. And they've done their research, they've done the homework, and they really provide an exceptional quality paprika that does come from Hungary. So yeah, proud to be using them.
Right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that insight.
Yeah,
So there's a few other things that I want to get to before we have to go. Uh, there's a section where you have desserts, and the photograph that stood out for me was the plum cake
yeah.
because it looked exactly like my grandmother's plum cake.
Mhm.
And so I think there were these associations that kept popping up that I loved, looking and reading the book. And so the funny thing, I want to tell you this story because it was just funny, because one time I said to my mother, this is long after my grandmother had passed away, I said, "Oh, I wish you had grandma's plum cake recipe." And she just looked at me and she said, "She used a mix." It was one of the most deflating moments of my
Yeah.
life.
Don't don't ever ask, about your heroes. Just let it be. Yeah. I mean, my grandmother I learned the kind of the same thing sometimes that she'd used like I remember there was a salad that Nana Arlene used to make, and it was, oh my God, it was loaded with blue cheese and mandarin oranges and nuts, and like, but it had the most incredible dressing. And I was in my head as I got older, I was like, wow, she like whipped this thing up with like fresh lemon juice and this vinegar and oil. And I don't know, it was this romanticized version of this vinaigrette. It turns out it was just good seasonings. Like the packet, like what comes in a packet, she just put white balsamic in it. So I can relate.
But there was your grandma Aggie. She was the inspiration for your recipe that's cucumber and buttermilk ranch, because she always had, I guess, an ever-present bottle of
Yeah.
store-bought dressing, right?
Ranch was always on the table. I mean, there could have been like there was no salad. She like vegetables were not really a thing. So I don't know why. Like maybe there would be iceberg lettuce, but there would be a bottle of ranch next to it. There'd be eggplant parmesan and goulash, and there'd be a bottle of ranch next to it. It was a very it was the Wild West. Yeah.
So sweet pancakes. I'll let you pronounce the name, which you
Palacinta.
Palacinta,
Mhm.
and you say that there's an art to making them. Could you describe that?
Yeah. So it's like when you make pancakes, like the first one's always kind of the crap one, and then that's the throwaway. Maybe the next one after that. With crepes, getting them really thin and just keeping them intact, it takes a lot of practice. So, and to flip them like Grandma Aggie, which she used to do with her hands, she would just like pick it up, was it's kind of like an art form that you need to master after making like thousands of grapes. So there's also the aspect of like filling them and pairing them with different flavorings. And the thing is that you can't go wrong. You can stuff it with whatever you want. In Hungary, though, the traditional palacsinta is filled with a cheese, like a fresh cheese, and apricot jam, and finished with chocolate sauce and maybe some walnuts, which is, I mean, fantastic and it's delicious. And that's what I grew up on. But Grandma Augie also used to love to put condiments in front of us. So it was like Hershey's syrup and Hershey's caramel, and maraschino cherries and whipped cream and cinnamon sugar. And she just was like, go to town, So it was Palachinta has a very special place in my heart.
You mentioned fresh cheese. This recipe was I can't wait to actually make this recipe because we make a lot of paneer here, which is fresh cheese from the Indian
Yeah.
region. But this is totally a different type of cheese, and I'd love for you to share just quickly um, how easy it is to make something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially just separating the curds and the whey, by adding acidity to it. And if you're comfortable with letting it sit out, for a hot moment, it's it could take I think it's like a day, and it's quite lovely and beautiful. You strain it afterwards after it separates through a cheesecloth, and keep it in your fridge, and it's just, you can smear it on like griddled toast. You can whip it up into kurzet, which is um this Hungarian dip that I have in the book, and also stuff it into your palachinta. So it's so versatile, it's so easy. And if you have any like dairy that's starting to go like right before it goes bad, you can always just recycle that, make it into cheese, give it some new life. So
It's a combination of just simply milk and cream, right?
yep, that's it.
Yeah,
So
that's it's just the description of it just sounded astounding. So that's probably the first thing that I'm going to make when I
yeah,
maybe
let me know what comes out. It's so lovely to just have on hand and pull out some fresh cheese. So um
a pantry. That was another area of the book that I loved. And you've mentioned a couple of things already: the chamomile vinegar, the fermented garlic honey,
mhm.
which that was like, whoa, that's crazy. Now, is that strictly a Hungarian type of preparation, garlic mixed into honey?
No.
Oh,
That's
okay.
actually, yeah. Is a recipe that I learned from a cook of mine many years ago. And he used it to glaze this, like he was making ribs or like lamb ribs, and he glazed it with it. And that recipe always stuck with me. And I applied it to langos, which is this Hungarian fried flatbread essentially. And I drizzle the fermented garlic honey over it with cheese. And yeah, it has so many different uses. So yeah, it's a good one to have on hand.
And the pantry is a great little section because these are all like pretty easy actually things to make, like the chamomile vinegar and the fresh cheese, which we already described, and have multiple uses. So I think that when you talk about a book having a lot of practicality to it, that's something that I was drawn to in that. But I have to say that the remedies were great at the end of the book because there were two of those remedies that stood out to me.
Mhm.
And one was Nana's German chocolate cake, which is a completely different style of German chocolate cake.
Yes. the not It's not a real German chocolate cake. And for the longest time, I always thought that was German chocolate cake. I learned that the hard way. But yeah, Nana Arlene used to make it for any and all events, and any and all life events. It was just, that was what you wanted to reach for in a time of need. It was just so comforting. It makes the house smell incredible. And it's also something that's really easy to make. But she called it German chocolate cake because the chocolate bar that she used was called German chocolate. So German chocolate cake.
All right. And shout out again to your photographer, because the photo of the chocolate fizz in Mary Poppins was that was just out of this world. And anyone who's familiar with egg creams, for example, would recognize this type of thing. But if you would just describe that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, when I was little, Grandma Augie used to give me a chocolate egg cream, which is just essentially milk, chocolate syrup, and club soda at the end of the day. And I would sit down on this big black leather couch and I would sip it and watch Mary Poppins. It was the only movie on VHS that she owned, so I've seen Mary Poppins God knows how many times. And it was a really important recipe. And I say recipe, I mean, it's so easy to make, but it was an important story to include in that section. So yes, there is a egg cream sitting on top of a VHS player, which I love that that's in there.
Yeah, it may have been hard for them to find the VHS player. I don't know.
It's actually surprisingly easy. One, I think our production designer, yeah, she was like, "Yeah, I got one in my apartment. I'll go grab it." So
I could use it. I just opened a chest, and there's like I don't know how many VHS tapes in there. And I looked online, and it's like you're gonna pay over $200 for a
yep,
VHS player.
yep, yep. Isn't it sad?
Jeremy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. It's
Thank
been
you.
a real pleasure to talk with you and to get an introduction to Hungarian cuisine. The book is Second Generation by Jeremy Salomon, and he is the chef and owner of Augie's Counter in Brooklyn, New York. And all the best, and I can't wait to get there and enjoy some of your food there. Uh, I don't know where I'd even begin to start. It would be, I think it'd be an all-day affair.
Yes, you'll have to come here at 9 a.m. and then we'll let you go at 10 p.m.
Okay.
So
Sounds absolutely perfect, and it sounds like my ideal type of day, actually. So I'm good with that.
thank you for having me and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks again. We'll be back with more great taste in just a moment.